And we are live, and I can see that we've got a few people on the call already, which is great. Shall we, what do you reckon, Nikki and Sonia? We'll wait till sort of like 2-3 minutes pass before we get going, just give people a chance to grab a post-lunch cuppa and jump on the call.
Yeah, absolutely. So everybody on the call, we were talking about what animals we have, just so you can tell us what you've got in the chat. It's always good to know who's got what animals, or maybe with them or at home waiting for them. I think we counted, we've got 46.
We can see how many legs there are on the call in total.
Yeah. Oh my God. Stop that. Now I'm going to have to work that out.
That's going to be, that could be. This is the real reason to have an AI assistant on a call, isn't it? Is to do the maths.
So I'm doing 5 by 2 and 41 by 4. So that's 94 legs.
94 legs just from your abode.
It's excluding people.
I love that. I love the fact that you count the animal legs, but you discount the humans.
Well, my husband half chopped one off the other day. He had an argument with an angle grinder and kind of went through his leg. Luckily, he didn't do anything that serious. But yeah.
There's a chat note about technical issues.
There is. Amelia.
Is there a technical issue? I have a message saying media could not be loaded. Do we have Kirsty on the call? Kirsty, are you one of our attendees? Let me message.
She did say she wasn't far away, didn't she?
I think I had that problem once when I was dialing in and I was on a dog walk, and it was because my connection wasn't strong enough. So when I was dialing in.
There you go again. Animals coming back into play.
Perfect. Let's see if anyone... We've got 3 on the call still. I don't know if that's Amelia's dropped off and back again. Message will persevere, and hopefully people will come through. Amelia, if you're with us, do you want to just pop a little wave or hello in the chat?
Yeah,
we're connected. Fantastic. Happy days. So have you, your tribe of animals, Sonia, how long have you built those up over? That's quite an endeavour.
Well, when I was on my own 4 years ago, I only used to have 3 horses, 2 dogs and a cat.
Wow.
Met my husband who had 6 cats, 4 dogs. And now we have 10 dogs, 18 cats, 3 more that we've said we'd take for somebody who can't keep them, 5 horses, 2 of which we rescued from slaughter recently, 4 donkeys, 2 cows, 2 pigs, 5 chickens. But we now only take rescue other than my 3 horses, which are proper competition horses, but the rest only ever come from an association that, like the pig, etc. We only ever take rescue or rehomes.
That seems. I'm embarking the journey for my first horse purchase at the moment for my daughter. So I pick your brains after that.
I was going to say, yeah, absolutely. Feel free. I've had horses for years and years and years, so more than happy to share experiences and do's and don'ts.
Definitely. Well, authentic leadership of an equine type is something that I'm going to need a little bit of experience on. There's several people actually that I've come across. I met one person, and now I've met 2 or 3 others who use kind of like equine theory as a kind of, to influence leadership style, which is very interesting.
And it is all about authentic leadership with the horses, because they're so intuitive. I've got obviously no horsey people, and one of my boys, George, even though these individuals are horsey, they can't catch him.
Interesting.
And he's like, for me, he's a dope on a rope, but for anybody else, I had to unfortunately have him on livery once, and I got there and they're bringing him in on a bridle. I was like, what are you doing? He's like this on the end of a lead rein. And they went, not for us, he isn't. And I was like, well, I said, that says more about you than him now.
They all have tricky members of the team that we need to try and manage, don't we? So, yeah, interesting.
Don't they pick up on authenticity, which is why they won't respond to you if you're not being authentic to lead them across the field or something. Yeah,
absolutely.
I went on a fabulous holiday with my daughter to some stables in Spain, and the woman that ran it was an English woman. She was an ex-eventer, and her phrase was, when you're riding, what goes through your brain goes through the rain. And I just thought that was so good, because they can tell instantly, can't they? They can literally read your mind, can't they? It's fascinating.
They are raising the same horse, George, who I love dearly. And I actually delivered him into this world. He's one of my big babies, you know. When I'm riding him, because I ask him to do stuff, he's the spookiest, bugger you can ever get, right? My husband sits on him, never asks him anything, never spooks, never does anything. If my husband loses his rhythm in trot, George walks. He goes, oh no, I'll walk now. It's fine. You know, he looks after him so much, you know, and it goes back to that. Because my husband's sitting there going, actually, I really don't know how to ask you much, so I won't bother. George goes, yeah, cool. Let's go for a little putt. It's fine. I get on and go, come on, we're going to work now. He goes, sorry.
I love it. I love it. Right. So let's have a think. We're just after 5 past now. So I'd like to welcome everybody to this Evolving HR live session, which appears to be on horses. So far, we might deviate from that. We'll see how we go. My name's Di Gates. I'm the founder of Connection Heroes, and our guests on today's session are the fabulous Nikki Corbishley of New Coaching, and the equally fabulous and very horsey, it transpires, Sonia Moore, founder of Situate. So can I just invite yourselves to sort of say hello to everybody, just let us know a little bit about what you do, and maybe tease us a little bit of what authentic leadership means to you. Nikki, we'll go to you first.
Okay, yes, Nikki Corbishley, New Coaching and New HR Limited, and I specialise in helping leaders who appear composed externally but feel misaligned internally, and I help them to restore their leadership identity without having to walk away and throw away the career that they work so hard to build. And authenticity is so key to the foundations of my business, because it's how it all started. I walked away from a career after burnout because I spent too much time in performative leadership mode and not being authentic, and it attacked my nervous system and I burnt out. So yeah, I want to make sure nobody else has to go through that.
That seems fair. So you gave us a little hint then as to your take on authentic leadership in terms of what it's not. So we'll come back to that. Thanks, Nikki. Sonia, do you want to say hello to everyone? Let us know a little about it.
Yeah, sure. So I'm the founder of Situate. Situate is a learning platform currently for management skills, but we're expanding that to cover lots of topics. But we are effectively a Duolingo. So we develop people using situational development effectively. So in terms of what authentic leadership is for me, it is literally bringing out the best of you to bring out the best in others, and really being true to yourself. And it goes back to Nikki's point. When you try to hide and you try to disguise and you try to put kind of cloaks on that aren't your cloak, it just makes life very difficult and people can see through it. Mm-hmm. So by maintaining that, really understanding who you are and being who you are, which may mean that you're not in the right place, but that is a really powerful place to be. And you're so much better as a leader for being you, turning up as you every day makes you a far, far better leader.
And I just want to, before we kind of dive in too much more deeply, I'd love to hear from both of you. When you're talking about leaders, we obviously know organizational leaders, you know, we think about the boardroom table and stuff, but does this, when we're talking about authentic leadership, does this have other applications for people in different roles or maybe different areas of their life? Who are we talking to here? Who are the leaders we want to help be authentic?
I think everybody needs help to be authentic, in my view. I don't think it's just kind of, you know, leadership in an organization. I think it's wherever you are in whatever part of your life for which it's relevant.
Mm-hmm. Leading yourself. as well as leading an organisation, leading a team, leading a project, leading a rollout or anything.
Or a horse.
Or a horse, absolutely. Yeah, we don't want to
dog.
go on. So, I mean, you know, I'm going to be a little bit antagonistic. You guys make this sound like not only the most common sense way to lead, but arguably the most effective way to lead. I love what you said there, Sonia, about, you know, bringing the best out of you so you can bring the best out of others. If it was that obviously the most effective way to lead and the best way to look after your own well-being as a leader, why isn't it the norm? Why are we needing to have this conversation? Why isn't authentic leadership just what happens, Nikki?
Well, it is in some businesses, and I've been lucky enough to be in some businesses where it is, but I think a lot of it is around that culture, the psychological safety that you have within that organisation to show up as yourself, and whether that organisation is going to accept that you make mistakes or that you don't know something, or whether you have to show up and be rewarded or maybe punished for making mistakes or not knowing. So it's about having that trust in being able to be yourself. And a lot of systems, organizational systems and people within them don't shape that culture, and then that cascades down. So I think it all starts with that.
So you've worked with some organizations where this is the norm. When it's not, what's the alternative? What are you seeing out there, maybe, Sonia, that's kind of, you know, would you say authentic leadership, leading confidently and authentically, is something that shows up more in certain types of organizations? Are there certain organizations where there's an alternative dominant style of leadership? And what is that? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think it is very mixed out there, to be fair, Diane. I think, you know, I'm going to just take it back one step and say that, you know, the expectations on individuals themselves make it quite difficult for this not to be as commonplace as we describe it is, you know. So it sounds so easy, but as we know, you know, one of my favorite sayings is simplicity is the hardest thing to achieve, because we all make everything complex. And that includes our own lives, our own expectations of lives, etc. We could even go one bit deeper and say, you know, things like this, where everybody wants to aspire to being on TikTok or want loads of likes, or, you know, look at LinkedIn, etc. It starts to build expectations within self that sometimes you feel as though you can't fulfill. So then you start doing things that aren't probably natural to you, or in a way they're not natural to you, to try and either build exposure, you know, build confidence, whatever. So I think it does, as Nikki already said, it does start with self. Finding the right tribe for you, I think, is really important. And organizations are wonderful at recruiting people for who they are and then trying to change them. Because they go, oh my God, that's an amazing individual, full of ideas, full of enthusiasm. They get into an organization, and then the organization goes, here's all your policies, here's all your parameters. We don't do that, we don't do this, which then takes that wonderful, authentic person they recruited and puts them in a system that sometimes quite often doesn't work for them. So I think there's a real variety of issues that says why it's actually quite commonplace, as opposed to, as in the lack of authenticity, as opposed to why it's so easy to achieve.
So you think there could be some sort of systematic bias and policy bias that perhaps drives us towards our, homogeny? You know, is that one of your four-legged creatures coming?
It's a fly. It's not one of mine.
What's these systems that you're talking about that drive people to behave in this way and, you know, start to shed a level of authenticity? What are those in the real life? What are the real kind of systems or pressures or biases that are making it hard to lead with authenticity?
A lot of that is shaped around role modeling and the legacy of leadership. And I think it is shifting. I think it's more accepted that authentic leadership is healthy and it's the right way. It builds trust, and it's good for employee engagement and the like, and it's good for the organisation. But that's organisation systems haven't caught up with that, and it's that legacy of what leadership looks like. You know, I'm coaching someone who is really empathetic, really human-centered, and leads her team like that and gets really great results. But she flips on this leadership mask to when she's dealing with the exec and her line manager, and she's at a stage where she goes, but that's what leadership is. If they saw authentic me, they would think I was weak. And leadership in our norms isn't weakness. It's strong people. It's be strong, be direct, be the person leading everyone forward.
That's a really hard, long shift, isn't it, to achieve? Similarly, I was speaking on a webinar. I've been on a couple of webinars in the last few weeks, actually, with Sam Shepherd, talking about introversion and introversion bias. And one of the statistics shared was that 96% of leaders are extroverts, whereas obviously 50% of the workshop is introvert. Therefore, the systems, the reward, the recognition is driven towards what success looks and feels like for extroverts, who we can process quickly, we can respond. Is there something going on? It makes sense when you talk about extrovert and introvert. When we're talking about authentic, is there a non-authentic? Is there...
That's a really interesting one, isn't it? Because actually you can be authentic, but might not be quite nice.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of bastards out there, isn't there?
Yeah, you're still being authentic, aren't you? You know, so I think sometimes when we also talk about authentic, we get that gets mixed up with a nice person. Because actually you don't want somebody who's being authentic if they're a complete mad person, you know, and nasty and quite vicious and everything else. But unfortunately, they still do really well in leadership because they are bang, 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 you know, need this. They break a lot of people underneath them, but they manage to get to senior positions in organisations.
So do we only want the nice people to lead authentically then? This is interesting.
That's a challenge, isn't it?
Do we want the dickheads to be authentically horrible? Like, where do we stand on this?
Well, any authenticity is starts with self-awareness and regulation, doesn't it? You can't just, even if you're a nice person, just being yourself isn't then adapting to meet the needs of the other people around you. So a workplace is collaborative, and you've got to have that awareness of what's going on around you, whether you're leading a team or working with your peers or what it might be, to have that level of adaptation and emotional intelligence as well.
And I think that's the key bit. It's that emotional intelligence, and it's that asking yourself the question, is what you're doing serving you well? Because if it's not serving you well, then you need to have the whereabouts to go, okay, what would serve me better? You know, and that's whether you're being, as you say, a dickhead, or whether you're being too nice. You still need to be able to go, is it serving me well? What do I need to change? But change, you know, having that golden thread through you and changing authentically for it to actually, you know, work. I don't know if any of you have come across a lovely lady, and I'm going to remember her first name, not a second name, Nikki. And Nikki she's got an experiment about how you portray yourself to others. And it's have you ever heard of the apple experiment, where you take an apple, cut it in half, put it in an airtight container, a see-through airtight container, one half in one part of the room, one half in another part of the room. And you talk really horribly to one, like, I hate you, you know, you're horrible. And to the other, you go, oh, I love the apple. The one that you actually are horrible to will rot quicker.
What?
And the whole basis of this is that apples actually have the same or similar water content to a human, and therefore it shows the reaction. So talk about authentic, it goes on to be, you've got to come from the heart. And when you when you stand there and go, oh yeah, that's lovely, and don't mean it, actually they can tell that you don't mean it. So it's just about being true. So what's going on in here, you need to moderate, but you've got to align it to what's coming out. You can't say one thing and mean another.
So there's an element here, isn't there, of starting to look at our kind of nervous system states and our, you know, maybe bordering on, you know, a little bit of co-regulation. Or your Apple experiment had reminded me of something I read a little while ago, Sonia, which was if we need help, and if I ask you as a human, if I ask you a question in exactly the same way as I asked ChatGPT, and if you, Nikki, and ChatGPT respond in exactly the same way with the same content to that answer, I will have a different neurochemical reaction to the content you give me as opposed to ChatGPT, because I'm aware that you've taken time out of your day, you've considered it, you've made effort to come to me. So my biological reaction and my neurological reaction is differently. So you mentioned, I'm going to kind of come to you, Nikki, on this, because you said that when you were leading performatively, it damaged your nervous system. Do you want to, I'd be really interested, maybe just open this up a little bit for us. And when we're talking about authentic leadership, we're talking about being truthful, but what does that mean? Like how can we understand what's happening to us kind of neurologically and biologically?
It's quite simple. Your brain perceives risk if you're constantly adapting. It's saying, why are you adjusting all the time? Why aren't you being yourself? It's putting that stress hormone, that cortisol is being released, and over time, over a prolonged time, that can build up to burnout, because you're constantly having to firefight, having to second guess yourself, having to think about different ways of, you're perceiving risk. Basically, you're going, I can't be myself, there's a risk there. So how do I need to be to navigate that risk? Your brain's going, shit, there's risk here, there's a big scary lion that's going to come and eat us, we need to change. And you keep doing that over a prolonged period of time, that builds up together with other mitigating factors, which would probably jump in as well around your whole environment. And that's why it can cause burnout. That's why it caused me burnout, on top of some life stuff going on at the same time. Yeah,
it's overlap, isn't it? It's the same. Yeah. It's intersectionality on quite a broad sense. We don't exist in a vacuum at work, do we? We have other things going on.
If we're working against our true selves, if we're working against our values, if we're doing things that we don't really want to do, we're getting our brains triggered into risk mitigation.
I'm interested to see, like, let's put ourselves in the real situation of a workplace, a busy workplace, maybe an organisation at a point of growth or a point of change. We're in a leadership role. Let's assume that we're getting rewarded for that. What's reasonable and what's not reasonable? Because I can imagine that the argument that might come for the maintenance of the status quo is you're getting paid well enough, you crack on. There is stress involved in this. Yes, you might not be feeling at full strength, but you need to kind of like suck it up because we need you to deliver here. This is a tough room, therefore we need you to play it tough. Like, you can imagine that there is a thought leadership there. What is reasonable, not reasonable? How, let's look at some real workplace situations. Like, you've got a board meeting presentation coming up, and what's going to communicate and make something land well with this board, but it might not suit your natural preference for communication and relational communications. Like, let's look at some real situations. What's reasonable and what's damaging?
I think in the situation you've just described, my personal view is that's reasonable. It's a one-off event that is, has an end point that So that you're going into this situation, you're doing this presentation, it's probably going to be a difficult presentation. You can prepare for that. It's just a bit shit at the moment. I think that's fair.
It's one-off. That's what makes it different, that it's a one-off.
But I think if you're constantly like that, then obviously the impact is huge. I used to have a CEO that always used to go, your body always leaks. And what he means by that is when something's wrong, your body will be telling you, whether it's spots, eczema, bad back, something, your body will always leak. And I think if you can, it goes back to that understanding self a little bit more, if you can have the self-awareness to know what your body's telling you, you know, it's like when you know you're working under stress all the time, you go on holiday, you get a cold.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. That's
your body saying you're actually working in high cortisol, high stress environment too much all the time. So your body's telling you it's leaking. You know, and what we have to do is understand what those triggers are for us as an individual.
And also being us adjusting and being someone we're not. Delivering a presentation in a style, maybe we've got to deliver something at work that doesn't align with what we believe, our values, or deliver something that we're not confident in. We think we're really adjusting. We're making massive effort to put this in. What people see is a very small amount of that. So the amount of effort we're putting into change versus what's actually visible are miles apart from one another. And just as Sonia said, when you can switch that off and just go, yeah, I know my stuff, I know what I'm doing, it aligns with my values, I believe this, you relax and you're yourself, and people can tell that. They can read your body language, your body's not leaking. Sounds a bit messy, but I had someone, a leader that I was coaching last year, and she was introvert, and she came from I do a lot of psychometric profiling with insights and stuff like that. And if you know that, she led from a very green energy perspective. She was trying to influence some of her peers that led with a very much a red-yellow colour energy. They were very different to her, and she was struggling to get them to buy into her project because she wanted them to contribute their part, their knowledge, their specialist area into this project, and without it she couldn't move it on. But she just was hitting barriers. They were going, yeah, we'll do it, and not doing it. Anyway, through coaching, we then realigned with her authentic self, her strengths, her values, and she started to manage those conversations in her true way. And guess what happened? They did what she asked them to do. That she got that influence. Something just switched for her like that.
There's a confidence, I think, you can only personify and portray and make tangible to others when you feel it yourself, isn't there? It's really interesting, and you've started to move us into the place I think is a good place to maybe take the conversation, which is you can see the personal benefits to both your own well-being and arguably your career progression or your business growth if you start to notice and tune in and lead authentically in line with your values. If there's people on the call who are maybe part of institutions and they've got to convince people that there are also wider benefits to the team and wider benefits commercially to the organisation, what are your experiences, or what is the evidence that shows that leaders can achieve, that teams that are led authentically and the organizations that encourage this, like what are the wider benefits to team and company?
There is lots of research on this, but although I haven't got it to hand at the moment, but there is lots of research that will literally kind of give you the percentage of what you lose when people leave themselves at the front door. Which is what we're saying, isn't it? People decide that they're not going to bring themselves to work because there's no point. And the productivity loss is huge. It's absolutely immense because, you lose all that passion, that engagement, those ideas, because I don't think they're worth bringing. So there's a massive loss when we don't enable people to be themselves within the workplace.
And this isn't just leaders. This is
everybody, absolutely. Just think if everyone had one idea and you're in 1,000-person organization, you're losing a lot of potential in that organisation.
Absolutely. But we have to be, I guess, intentional about this and design the systems and the ways of working to enable that.
Yeah, there are some companies out there that do have a strengths-based model for hiring and for job role allocation. I've never experienced it. I've never worked in one, but it's one of the, one of the ways that they say this is a really beneficial way to work. Is rather than putting people into job roles, you put them into skill sets and strengths.
Well, you are starting to see that with some of the big tech firms, where actually they are going out of their way to recruit neurodivergent individuals, especially autistic, etc., because of their advanced skills in tech type situations. And that's a big shift, you know, and it is very overt, because they're brilliant. And, you know, their way of thinking just aligns so much. And they've actually set up parts of their business specifically to be able to, you know, take all this amazing skill and optimize it. Where a lot of, don't get me going on schools, because I think schools are shocking, but, you know, a lot of organisations like education, they were set up years ago. They've got the same processes and they suit a very small amount of the population. The vast majority, even if you go on the 80-20 rule, it means that more of the population don't fit it than do.
Absolutely. No, I agree. The education system's another thing I can talk about all day. You know, we're in Connection here as our focus. Our mission is to unleash the power of human connection back in the workplace. That's what we're really interested in. And I look at my daughter's ADHD and I look at the way that the school has treated her and how it's set up. And then we shifted school. And the new school, it had what they called a regulation station at the back of the room. And at any point, if you were overwhelmed, absolutely nothing to do with whether you were neurotypical, neurodiverse, had a diagnosis. It was just, if you just reached a point in your day where you were just a bit knackered or overwhelmed and you couldn't focus, you could just get up and just get yourself a little fidget. And I just thought, what an insightful, very, very easy intervention that just enables people. And also, which is what we're seeing a lot with organizations, is it enables accountability. So if you encourage your teams to develop this self-awareness and notice when they're getting overwhelmed, notice when they're maybe not acting in line, well, then what? And then there needs to be, and I don't think, I'll be really interested in your opinions in this. I don't think I think if the organization can enable that, allow it and encourage it and give permission for you to recognize and start to understand your own, how you can optimize your own performance. The organization then the interventions to then support that can be very lightweight, because it should be, the individuals should be encouraged and made accountable to then, you know, put themselves back into a place. I mean, have you seen any, I mean, obviously the regulation station at the back of the school, what have you seen in organizations who are getting this right? Like, what are the organizations that are enabling and encouraging authentic leadership? What are they doing to make it work?
I think it goes down to trust. You know, I've not seen many, by the way, but it goes down to trust. And it goes back to your point, Di. If somebody knows what their job is and you give them the responsibility to undertake their role, and you don't micromanage, you don't put loads of policies on them, you enable things that help them to actually do their role. Look at simple servant leadership kind of theory. You will get individuals who are far more aligned, far more engaged, etc. I think some of the problems for me are we've got into a bit of a world in a lot of companies where policies rule. Like, there's a policy for everything. And the policies are written in a way nobody understands them, so nobody's ever going to follow them, which means you're constantly working against, the organisation is working against itself.
Yeah.
And we also, I think we as a HR community are still not yet moving forward as quickly as we need. We're kind of stuck a little bit. So, you know, new ways of learning, etc., aren't being looked at because I think HR's overwhelmed at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think you could probably put a lot of the community into this bucket that we're talking about. Is that similar to your experience, Nikki, in terms of organisations maybe being a bit slow to react to actually drive the improvements and the support that's needed?
Yeah, I think it loops right back to where we started on that whole, but we're aware of what people need to perform at their best, but the organisation systems aren't set up to be able to deliver that. I've not seen or worked in an organisation that has any special interventions. Like Sonia said, it is trust, and it's down to the manager and how safe the people feel that they can call out and go, do you know what, I'm having a really bad day, do you mind if I, but of course it's not just trust, it's they've got to be able to deliver their job. If you've got someone that's skiving off all the time and not doing their job, then something else needs to be looked at, whether it's a performance issue, a health issue, they need support, whatever it might be. It's giving the and this is coming into your two's area of expertise in that development space, is giving those managers the tools to be able to have those conversations and be able to talk about performance or what might be going on that's stopping that performance level. It's true.
I think well, I mean, the latest Gallup data is showing, isn't it, that, leaders are experiencing a whole world of shit at the moment. And although they're kind of like top level wellbeing figure and engagement figure might not have changed that much, their daily experience in terms of stress and anxiety and loneliness have gone up across all points. And I think we can sometimes underestimate the pressure that's been both on leaders and on managers of just navigating the just phenomenal rate of change that's happened in the workplace and that is happening. And I know obviously we can't get away from the rise of the role of AI in our workplaces now, which is another potential danger or risk factor for authenticity, which we'll maybe come back to in a second. But I think the statistic that struck my eye was, if we want our team members to roll and really adopt and engage AI to increase productivity and deliver results, 97% of those team members only get on board and start to do it if they feel supported and encouraged by their manager. So just the role of leaders and managers on every area of employee engagement, of productivity, let alone getting to the point where, and now be your authentic selves, even just the day job and the day challenge on leaders and managers now is just phenomenal. I mean, from your work coaching people in these positions or training, doing development programs, how are leaders coping at the moment and senior managers coping at the moment? Because this is it's a phenomenally challenging time, I think, for them.
They don't have time to stop and think. And that's one of the things. I mean, when I bring people into my coaching space, half the time they're just glad of some time to stop, to think, to be able to download, to be able to process what's going on and be able to think it through. It's no big life-changing transformations that's going on in their lives. It really is, I need some thinking space here. I need to work this out. I need to know what's going on, because at the moment, just moving from one to the other, doing everything, time pressure, money pressure, everything.
Are you finding the same kind of, Sonia, with the people you're working with?
And probably your businesses, my business is probably more aligned than Nikki's, but so we see it from a slightly different view. I think for me, it's tricky because organisations are forgetting that the basics still have to be right.
Yeah.
So even doing that management development, that leadership development at the fundamental level still needs to get done, but somehow, because the world's changing quite a lot, it somehow feels forgotten. But it's so key, because if you can't, it's like anything, you can't get the basics right, everything else falls apart on top of it. And I think in a lot of places, it either assumptions the basics are in, or they've gone, well, actually, take AI. We need them to do AI. No, actually, we just need to get them to do really good conversations first.
Yeah.
But they seem a little bit missing, which is why things like engagement survey results aren't changing. You know, they're the same, because we're not focusing on the proper basics that make great managers, great leaders, and great businesses.
Absolutely. And I think we've got to acknowledge that we're in this very challenging time. And what's maybe an interesting area for us to look at is, how do we start? What are the small shifts that we can take as individuals, as humans, and as team leaders to start making change given this tumultuous period that we're in? And in particular, you said then, kind of like, Nikki, that when you're sitting down with people and you're coaching them, they're just glad a bit of a time out. They're just glad to have a moment to think. But you also both said at the start that the starting point for all of this is understanding your own values, understanding your drivers, and starting to notice a bit more about, now, all of those things, connecting with your values, figuring out what they are, noticing how your mind and body respond. They all take some time, don't they? You need time out to do that. So I think it'd be really interesting to see, could you give us some really practical ways in which maybe people on the call can make, if we can carve out half an hour of our time, like after the call, to just start noticing, start considering our values as individuals. So ignore our role as a manager of a team or a leader of an organization, just purely as individuals. How long do we need to set aside to just start this process? And what do we do? How do we start? There's the very origin of becoming more authentically ourselves in the workplace. I don't know who wants to take that first.
I don't have a magic answer. I think it depends where you're starting from. Mm-hmm. When I came out of my burnout, I was broken. My confidence was at an all-time low. I couldn't get another job, which is why I ended up being self-employed, because I thought, if no one else will have me, I'll do it myself. And I thought, okay, well, I don't know what I want to do, but this is my time to do something different. Mm-hmm. So I went back over all my old, you get to a certain point in your career where you've been put through quite a few assessments, psychometric profiles, workshops, whatever it is. And I went through them all. Okay. And I was like, where's the golden thread? What's showing up again and again and again? And then I was like, well, it's not rocket science, is it, Nikki? You know, I know I like process. I know I like, seeing bigger picture. I know I'm good at that. And then it was about, okay, well, what about my values? What do I stand for as well? Mm-hmm. Which I don't think anyone can tell you. You know what you stand for, what's right and what's wrong, basically. And then it's with that and going, well, how's that showing up in my workplace? How's it serving me? Where's the gap? What's working well for me? What isn't? And then, okay, if there is a gap, how do I feel about that? And what do I want to do about it? And once you've done that thinking in that half an hour or whatever you're allocating to yourself, you can then start to think about, well, how do I make the change that I want to see?
And we'll come back to that in a minute, is that then how do we start to act? But I'd just like to invite your thoughts on the same question, Sonia, is, if we can carve some time, half an hour, whatever we've got the luxury of having, what would be a useful starting point? Is it similar to Nikki's, or have you got other specific thoughts?
Similar. I'm a big kind of spider graph type person. Mm-hmm. So, get your parts of your life, work, sleep, eat, whatever it is that's on your spidergram, and do your 1 to 10, scale it 1 to 10, 10 being ace, 1 being really bad. Where are you? Where do you want to be? Mm-hmm. And pick anywhere between 6 and 10 areas. And then just spend a little bit of time working out, what they are, and get some help if you need to. It might be your best friend over a drink, but get some help in just saying, okay, I'm a 6 and I want to get to a 7. Mm-hmm. How can I do that? What small incremental changes do I need to do? Like Nikki, I'm a big believer in knowing what you stand for. I've got my values. I've actually got a tattoo of my values.
May I ask where it is?
It's
on the horse.
No, it's on the horse. Yeah, it's on the side of my leg, actually. But the reason why I had it is because actually I went through a really horrendous relationship, and I'd kind of lost a bit of sense of self. And I went, no, these are what I stand for. So if you don't fit into them, you will never, nobody would ever be a part of my life type thing. So they really mean a lot to me. So just try and find a way of understanding what is really important to you. And do those spidergrams, and 10 minutes a day, go for a walk, whatever it may be, wherever you can find your head at peace. My business partner always laughs at me because mine's when I'm mucking out the horses, because it's a really menial task, but I think amazingly well when I'm doing it. But everybody you just find what works for you. Take the time to find it.
There's something a little bit meta, isn't there, experiential about maybe the way in which you do this should feel right to you. So whether that's, it's interestingly, whether that's writing out, whether that's over wine, whether that's in nature, feeling your way to almost this starting process to try and do it in a way that feels congruent. And the other observation from both of you then was the likelihood is if you feel for whatever reason you want to create some space to start this thinking, there's probably a bit of shit gone down that's made you want to do that.
You've probably got to the bottom and you need to come back up.
Yeah, so you're not going to suddenly, if everything feels hunky and dory, you don't have a need to do this. It's just happening. So there's probably, there's something about some sort of inflection point of a change that you have to want to do. So I suppose that's number one, isn't it? So if anyone recognises that, it's
very, very fair comment. Yes,
you're not alone. And then what you both said in a different way was, if at that point your confidence is low, you probably don't your own voice in some way. So you look at external feedback. So for you, Nikki, you said you looked to all of the psychometric tests that you'd done or the workshop, but what had the systems show sense for you if you're a systems process? So you looked for some feedback or validation or some information, some data from courses that you've done, psychometrist, whereas like Sonia, I don't know either well, but your default was, well, I'll go and mock out and have some wine with friends and they tell me what was. But there's both of you in this was, so thinking time to contemplate, but that external feedback, is that kind of quite a normal thing? Is that, can you do it just me, myself and I, or do you think that external impetus of some sort's an important part of it? Of finding your authentic self?
I think both, actually, Di. I think you can probably work it out for yourself. However, that sharing it makes it more real, because you are, it's like when you've, if you want to set a target, actually writing it down makes it a little bit more real. It makes it, and I think talking to somebody about it gives you, it commits you to it a bit more than if you're just talking to yourself about it.
Absolutely.
So I do think there's a bit of a mix.
And also, if you are at rock bottom, like you said, you're going to have a lot of stories that you're telling yourself about what you believe in yourself. Usually you'll be believing that you're not good enough, or, it's your fault that you got here. And it's being able to talk it through with someone else gets those stories out your head. And when you start to talk about them, you go, actually, that is daft, isn't it? I've just made that up. There's no validation to that at all. So just having that trusted person in your network that you can talk to about how you're feeling, what you're thinking, what's going through your mind, and having, that trust again to be able to know that they won't just pacify you, they may challenge you as well in a good way, is really valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's I think that's super useful. I think there's the recognition that you're low, recognition that your own self-opinion is not at its greatest, so seeking that input from everyone else and starting to maybe get a more, sounds weird, doesn't it, to have an objective view of yourself, because you think that would be the most ultimately subjective thing you can have, but I guess not. And then, so once you've created this space and you kind of say, okay, this is step number one of having the confidence to lead authentically, you're starting to get maybe a more positive view of yourself, understand what matters, understand what your drivers are. Ultimately, most people work as part of a system. So then what comes next? So what do you maybe what advice maybe do you offer your kind of like your coaching clients, Nikki, in terms of, you mentioned earlier you had an introvert coachee who you encouraged, the system changed because of the way in which she was able to start active. Is that a normal kind of set of circumstances, that as soon as you start to lead authentically, the rest of the system starts to shift around you? Or are there other considerations when you start to actually want to act this out in the real world of work, so to speak?
Small changes.
Okay.
Just try it, experiment, one little step at a time. What's one thing, from your self-reflection, from what you want to get to your 7, from your 6, wherever you are, what will take me there? Let me try it. What's the worst that can happen is the default, but what's the best that will happen if I try this as well? And does the system shift around you? I've never seen it not. Whether that's just in your personal system, or whether it's the wider network and team that you have people around. I had someone that was too authentic, okay, and they came to coaching because they were starting to get a lot of grievances raised against them.
Okay.
And through that self-awareness and regulating that authenticity, and starting to adapt and build that trust with their team shifted to be authentic. And then, like we were going back to earlier, is they brought the best ideas. There was no conflict. There was no egos. It was just a collaborative workspace that they were in.
Okay, so that's what I'm kind of hearing there, is just checking right. So just think of some small specific things that you can do. So maybe how you're going to show up at a meeting, or maybe how you're going to respond next time if you've got that particular colleague who always talks to you in a certain way. Is that the sort of thing you're thinking?
Just try and be yourself. What will happen if you're yourself? If you're not trying to adapt your communication style, or your influence, or whatever it is that you want to do, just open up and be honest, be open.
Nice.
And to build on that, remember there's always a time lag. And when I say that, because you've changed, it's going to take time for others to recognize or believe that they've seen a change. Take a person who was too authentic. Just because they've started to be a bit more pleasant once, it's going to take a few more times for that to happen, for somebody to go, oh, actually, they've shifted. So now we can shift because we feel safe.
Yes.
So there is a time lag. So you've got to give yourself that time lag. But to be honest, if things don't start to change and you still feel uncomfortable, then it's like anything, you've got to change something else.
Yes.
You might need to go and find a new tribe, and there's nothing wrong with that. But one that, in the knowledge now that you know what your values are, or you know what you need it to look like to suit your version of authentic.
Yeah, you're a bit of a wiser buyer.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And then one of the things that we're really interested in Connection Heroes is if we want to kind of embed change and keep it going, then again, a lot of organizations, it can feel, like you say, often the way in which changes like this are dealt with as policy. Well, we'll have a policy about this and this, which is just, it becomes an HR initiative, doesn't it? It doesn't really get felt by people. So we talk about rituals. So in particular, we talk about connection rituals, which are small things that we do critically as a team to prioritize, in our case, kind of human connection. So we have, it might just be a particular agenda point that you have on every Monday morning meeting, or one of the best ones is a fuck up Friday, where everybody shares something they fucked up that week. And it's just normalizing a practice of vulnerability. That's what that one's about. So I think in this case, because we're talking small changes, incremental. If people are leading teams, if they're a team manager and they wanted to try and normalize and really encourage authenticity, are there any kind of to make this kind of more of a team culture and organizational culture, are there any kind of little rituals, any things that leaders and managers could do with their teams to really encourage everybody to lean into their authenticity? Just small practices rather than big policy changes. Anything that you've experienced that can work?
I think it's too dependent on what that situation is and that team dynamics and everything. But I always say to people at the end of coaching, it's hold yourself accountable. You do that by sharing. So make it a team effort. Don't just go in and decide that, right, team, we're going to be authentic. We talk about it and we agree what that is. And habit stacking, add it onto something that you're doing already, so that it doesn't feel like a big effort or a one-off event.
Yeah, I did this, therefore I can do that and contribute. Yeah. Any thoughts from you, Sonia?
Yeah, and those are, I like both of those, what you were saying, Di, and you, Nikki. And the other thing for me is, don't forget, it's not about you. It's about your team. Yeah. So go and ask your team what they want.
Yeah.
Go and speak to them. You know, we at Situate encourage conversation all the time.
Yeah.
You know, go and talk to people, go and find out what's happening, where they are, and then work out a joint solution. Just because you're the manager or a leader doesn't mean to say you know all the right answers. So go and speak to them, because then that helps again with that authentic. You know, there's nothing worse than you thinking that there's no point having an idea because your manager knows everything.
Yeah.
Go and talk to them.
Perfect. I love that. And then I'm just noticed we're a few minutes to go. So my final question for both of you. Imagine a world in which everyone creates this little bit of a space to reconnect with their values and what matters, and imagine that they can go into their workplace and start this incremental change, maybe introduce some, like, you know, team conversations and some rituals that actually starts to change things. And we end up in a world in 10 years time, 100 years time, I don't know how long it takes, where everyone is authentically themselves in the workplace, and authentic leadership is the absolute norm. Just describe, each of you, what does that workplace look like, feel like? What is the world like if authentic leadership is the norm? Nikki, paint a picture for us of what?
Oh my goodness!
Authentic utopian.
I'm gonna describe it from a personal perspective of when I worked in an environment where I could do that, and you feel purposeful. You feel that you find joy again. You like going to work. It doesn't mean it's not hard. It doesn't mean that there's not challenges, but you know that you can get through those challenges, and that if you've got a problem, you can shout out and talk about it, and then you're not replaying conversations, waking up at 2 a.m. worrying about something. You're not taking those problems home and sitting with them all night. You're not dreading your boss calling you. You're not dreading an email popping into your inbox, or even opening your emails. That sense of dread goes, and you can just relax. And when you can relax, you can just get on and enjoy your job and do a good job. When I started working authentically, I did my best work ever. And when I started doing my best work ever, I finally felt valued. I didn't have to seek validation or value from my others around me. And I found fulfillment. I found career fulfillment for the first time. I enjoyed what I was doing. It doesn't mean there wasn't crap days. You know, there were times when I cried at work and things, but I had a purpose, and I could get through it. And then my confidence grew, and it just tumbleweed, and it just grew and grew and grew.
Doesn't that sound mint? What are you, Sonia? What does this utopian world look like?
You know, when you said Nikki likes process and stuff, you can tell I'm big picture, right? Because I could say, you know, if authenticity was everywhere, we'd have no wars, we'd have no famine, we'd have no cruelty, and the world would be a much, much better place.
You'd have no narcissists.
Yeah, just less bullshit.
Yeah.
More honesty, vulnerability being praised. Oh, I love it. Well, on that note, thank you very much for painting a picture of what that world could look like, and giving some really, really valuable insights on the challenges to get in there, but maybe some practical steps we can start taking for ourselves and for our teams and our company. So thank you very much, guys. To everybody on the call, or those watching in the future, I hope you've enjoyed that. Do please track us all down on LinkedIn and connect. And I hope you very much enjoyed this Evolving HR live session, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks,
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Di.
Thanks, Di. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.